In a Japanese-style house, an epic battle unfolds between a brave group of warriors and a powerful golden-armored dragon. Amazing, whispers a young girl with short hair, holding a spear, watching the roar the beast releases before tossing one of her teammates into the air. The girl then begins to reflect that she only agreed to go because the leader of the group, the Red Bloods, is so persistent. But it would have been better to have declined the mission, as it was highly likely that they would all be massacred right there. The group's leader, a tall man with intense red hair, notices a general fear among his comrades, so he decides to give a speech to motivate them. I know we're in a tight spot and exhausted, but if we keep fighting without giving up, I know we, the Red Bloods, will emerge victorious. Whoa, the crowd let out a proud cheer, more motivated to fight against the dragon. Although the girl sweats nervously, wondering why they get so worked up when it's just a simple game. Next, the redhead, whose name is shown as Jeok Chan-Woon, orders the tanks to attack and the healer to continue supporting them. That healer was Dorothy, our protagonist, who continued to lament her decision to come. As everyone charged at the beast, Dorothy clarifies that she doesn't mind dying. However, losing her items would be a significant setback if she wants to progress in the game. The golden dragon then attacks with its tail, pushing the group back as they try to use their magic to protect themselves. Watching the scene, Dorothy continues to lament, recalling that the Red Bloods told her the mission would be purely martial arts. But this was directly facing one of the strongest video game bosses. Suddenly, a series of red codes appear on a black screen in front of the dragon. Where am I? A voice mutters. As the structure of these bosses is explained to us: Demon Palace, 7th underground floor, Abyss staircase. The deepest corners of the Demon Palace are the 7th floor, up to the 8th floor, and finally, the lowest, the 9th floor. It was there that this group of people faced off against that powerful golden armored dragon. What am I doing? The same voice wonders again. It's the voice of the dragon, who starts to glow. The beast uses its tail to deliver powerful blows to its enemies while mentally questioning why it's doing these things. Unaware of the dragon's thoughts, the Red Bloods realize they can't approach the dragon from its tail, so Jeok Chan-Woon orders them to attack this limb to gain an advantage. However, as they mobilize for this new attack, the dragon manages to move its tail in a way that repels its enemies, killing several of them in the process. I do this, but it's not my will. I don't know why. The dragon continues to struggle with its identity crisis when suddenly, a kind of atom with a red eye in its center stops it, saying that it knows why these people attacking it are the enemy. Still, the dragon responds that it doesn't feel like they are its enemies, so the evil eye explains. The enemy's objective is to defeat the golden armored sword dragon on the 7th floor and open the door to the 8th floor. When the time is right, you must fall at the hands of the enemy. The dragon is not satisfied with this and asks why. A series of red kanji characters, visible only to the dragon, appear on a black screen. The mandate of the heavens, they spell out. The mighty beast questions the meaning of this, and the red eye starts to envelop itself in a sinister red and yellow aura, as if preparing to unleash a powerful attack. However, the dragon is not intimidated and asks why it should obey the mandate of the heavens. While this is happening, Dorothy uses her powers to heal one of her allies, taking advantage of the beast's momentary loss of power. Now, it's the dragon who asks the eye figure why it's not answering its question, while emitting a golden glow around itself. Could it be that eye left you without answers? The dragon assumes. Following this, the beast now questions if there's any reason why it should follow the mandate of the heavens. It knew what it had to do, but it was the why that bothered the dragon so much. With no answer to this, it now wonders if there's a reason why it couldn't do things differently from what it had done in its past. Similarly, it questions why it should let those warriors pass, those who were the source of all that commotion and noise. What happens if I leave this place? It was the dragon's final question. Dorothy, assessing her situation, admits that the best thing they can do is run. Suddenly, the dragon begins to emit a glow, from which several beams of light emerge, wiping out the entire Red Blood team, except for Dorothy, who fortunately was out of its attack range. It was a transformation this boss had, but our protagonist still wonders why it happened when they still had a long way to go. It's strange. According to the plan, the first form should happen when the boss loses 75% of its life and he signals. So why did this happen? Seeing all her allies dead, Dorothy wonders what to do in this situation, as no one had explained it to her before. Assuming there was some kind of bug with the golden dragon, the girl decides she must ensure her own survival, so she takes one of her items from her arsenal. Return, she exclaims as the item draws a kind of portal that would send her wherever she wanted. But just as she was about to cross that portal, someone else beats her to it, using the transportation circle she had created herself. The girl curses the thief who stole her artifact. However, she is later confused by this because she didn't know there were more survivors in the area, ruling out that this individual could be from the Red Bloods since she hadn't seen them before. Seeing that it's best not to dwell on that for now, Dorothy decides to use the remaining item and teleports herself inside an Oriental-style city within a simple room. "I'm safe now," the girl mutters, relieved. However, behind her, she hears a voice complaining about the lack of space in that place. She realizes it's the person who stole her return circle, and wonders why she ended up in her room instead of going in another direction of her preference. But just as she was about to confront the man for his abuse, he turns around and states that the girl will be his guide. Upon hearing this declaration, Dorothy becomes indignant and questions if he's serious. The man, dressed in an elegant golden armor and with red eyes that contrast with his black hair, explains in a rather complex way that he had left from location 34, 184, 7999 for the first time, so he would need a guide to navigate the outside world. Dorothy, being the closest to him, would be the one to guide him. Of course, Dorothy becomes even more confused by these words and calls the man strange, so she secretly decides to use her detection magic to examine him. She notices that he emits a red aura, indicating he's a bad guy, so she gets scared and steps back, asking him who he is. "I was born from the abyss," the mysterious guy replies, though this only confuses Dorothy even more, so the man adds, "Isn't that enough? Then how about an irrational existence that escaped from an irrational world?" This complexity removes Dorothy's fear, and she directly asks him for his name. Simultaneously, she thinks that perhaps these strange answers are the result of the game's artificial intelligence trying to emulate reality as closely as possible. "My name," the red-eyed man mutters with such firmness that it once again makes the girl step back. But he answers, now in a more direct way. "The mandate of the heavens said I am the golden armor sword dragon, the guardian of the abyss. Most likely, that is my name." Skeptical, Dorothy asks if he is indeed the dragon from the 7th underground floor of the demon palace they recently faced, to which the man confirms. However, he adds that he has recently been reborn into a new existence, so he does not share the same identity as his past. Faced with this, Dorothy almost blurts out that she thinks it's stupid. But even though she finds him dangerous, she prefers to ask if he died to be reborn. "No, it's not that. Precisely 36 minutes and 14 seconds ago, I became self-aware. Before that moment, I didn't know who I was. Not to mention, I am completely different from what I was before becoming self-aware of myself. There was no me before this phenomenon, so I believe that my existence before and after are entirely different. So, calling it a rebirth wouldn't be wrong." Hearing the dragon utter such a soliloquy makes Dorothy call herself stupid for trying to understand that talisman thief. This leads her to simplify everything and opt to believe that this person is just a guy with a mental disability who is deeply immersed in the game's roleplay. However, remembering his threatening aura makes her think of another theory. On the other hand, the Red Blood group is reborn in a nearby city, where they complain about losing all their weapons and money after dying against the golden armored dragon. Jeok Chan-Woon, the leader, admits that it has affected them all as a team. One of their members then asks what they will do to recover. However, the redhead angrily blames everything on Dorothy. He rubs his face in frustration, thinking that he shouldn't have included her in their attack force just out of pity, and curses her for escaping with that other player. However, this last thought makes him wonder if there is someone like him among the Red Bloods who doesn't remember. So, Jeok Chan-Woon begins to recall when he was on the battlefield, injured, but instead of thinking about where that guy came from, he just reaffirms that Dorothy could have resurrected him if she hadn't escaped, putting all the blame on her. Back in the present, the redhead mentions that there was another person with Dorothy when she escaped, which is confirmed by a green-eyed archer who adds that he was a very bright guy. This makes the leader state that he has already figured out what happened and that maybe this isn't the end after all. Back with our protagonist, she ends up assuming that everything the human-shaped dragon was saying was part of a mission, and that it's very likely a unique mission that will give her wonderful rewards. So, she asks the guy if he has a better instruction for her. However, she reconsiders and, more confidently, approaches to ask him specifically where he wants her to guide him. The armored man thinks for a moment and admits that he doesn't know, so she will also have to guide him in that matter. This annoys Dorothy because she thought that this mission would be easy. Nevertheless, she says that if he wants her to be his guide, they should first talk about the most important matters, and it's about giving to receive. That language is from a different world, and I can't speak it. Anyway, I managed to understand it. That means there's an equivalent exchange. That was the lengthy response from the guy. However, Dorothy analyzes it and realizes that just because it's a martial arts game, the NPCs cannot speak English. The dragon seems to confirm this by saying that he can't say those words even though he knows their meaning. So, Dorothy continues to explain that giving and receiving is the most important rule in the human world. After comparing this practice to Newton's second law, and calling it the ultimate law, the protagonist tells him that if he has nothing to offer her, she will simply leave. In her mind, she admits that she must ensure there is a reward in this mission because it could be one of those difficult tasks without a reward. However, she still has a strange feeling about this guy who speaks in such an unusual way, as if he weren't human. After a moment of not responding, the man says he doesn't have information about her money or the objects she has. This makes Dorothy question if he's broke, although she looks at his armor and thinks that, being made of gold and so rare, just by selling one piece, she could obtain large sums of money. However, before suggesting it, the dragon goes on a new soliloquy about what money is and its role in the game, concluding that a part of him could create it. Said and done, the dragon man raises his hand, and a bunch of gold ingots appear, which seem to disappear from another player who claims to have created such pieces, leaving traces of information behind. Dorothy confirms that this could be her payment, but she questions if he could still give her more ingots once she's done guiding him, a request the other accepts. Yes, I thought I had stepped on poop, but it was golden poop. I already have enough rewards, but the more, the better. I used to dream of being a professional player, but it was hard to do it alone. This time, I'm sure to achieve it thanks to this NPC. It'll be easy to defeat a big one. Just as she finishes her train of thought, Dorothy extends her hand and accepts the young man's deal. They both introduce themselves formally, but when the dragon tries to say the girl's name, only the sound "do" comes out, as he couldn't pronounce her full name. The girl questions if it's because her name is not in the Murim style, explaining that it's the name she normally uses in all games. Upon hearing the last word, the dragon says he can't pronounce game either, even though he understands it. Dorothy states that surely there are few players who follow the game theme to name their characters, so it's unlikely the dragon can talk to them. Similarly, Dorothy says it's not important because they won't talk to the masses very often, and they won't even see each other again once the mission is over. Do you have any areas of interest? The girl asks the armored dragon, and he directly tells her that he wants to understand the logic behind humans and objects. This once again confuses Dorothy, saying she didn't quite understand what he was looking for, so she'll have to be patient with him. She also admits that she's no longer afraid of him, so it wouldn't bother her to walk around with that NPC on the street. Then, Dorothy suggests that the best way to learn about the relationship between humans and objects would be to go to the market, so the short-haired girl takes the warrior to that place. There, she explains that this place is called the Valley of Ginkgo Trees, or Hangmak Village. It's where players, called Yong-ins, respawn exactly beneath a huge ginkgo tree in the center of the city, which they know as the Tree of Life. According to the girl, Yong-ins refer to players like her, while NPCs like him would be Pyong-ins, and those who know how to use martial arts are called Mu-ins. The armored dragon says he already knew all that information, although he doesn't know why. He also reveals that all these things are transmitted from a world called the Legend of the Ancients, and that this place had many Yong-ins several years ago. But now it has become a quiet town mostly filled with Pyong-ins. Dorothy explains that this place is no longer as popular because most people have settled in megacities, and only true veterans come to this town from time to time. This catches the dragon's attention, and he questions her about why she is still like this, making the younger girl nervous. That's because I couldn't shake off my adolescence. You can call it the curse of a solo player, but it doesn't matter anymore. The armored dragon stares curiously at his guide until she suggests going to eat something since her hunger bar is almost at its limit. However, as she looks around, she notices that the villagers in the area are trembling in fear, and there's a depressing atmosphere that only arises when a fighting event is approaching. To confirm her suspicions, Dorothy uses her detection spell and sees that it's her dragon companion emitting a powerful aura that the Pyong-ins in the area fear, so she asks him to stop emitting it. The man admits that he can't do it because it's a part of his being, but he can suppress it and reduce its intensity. The Pyong-ins' movements remain somewhat erratic, but they continue to function normally, so Dorothy gives her approval and suggests they go eat. "Why don't you go eat in hell?" an angry voice says as it approaches the duo, immediately making Dorothy nervous. It was the leader of the Red Blood, Jeok Chan-Woon, who was looking at them with crossed arms while the girl tried to calm the situation by greeting him jovially. In the next scene, we see the small town of Hangmak destroyed by a massive explosion, several people in red robes on the ground, and Dorothy looking at the sky in surprise. "Oh, he's flying," says the girl, watching Jeok-un disappear into the air in a cloud of smoke, wondering how he did that while spitting out blood. Below him was the golden armored dragon, with his fist raised, confirming that it was him who caused such destruction. As expected from the boss of the 7th floor of the demon castle, he's really strong, Dorothy thinks while marveling at her ally. Moments before this conflict unfolded, Jeok-un was with both of them. The protagonist politely asks him what brings him here, even calling him her appa as a sign of respect, although she had a completely different attitude in her mind. "Aw, this annoying bastard. I should have cut him down years ago. I regret not killing him just because he's the only person I know in this game. Maybe he's upset because everyone in the raid died, and I was the only one who managed to escape and survive." The short-haired girl continues to analyze the possibilities of the encounter when the rest of the Red Blood members arrive. They greet Dorothy maliciously, making her nervous and causing her to wonder if they have noticed something. "I messed up. If he came with his comrades, he must be ready to do the best mission I've found since I started playing," the short-haired girl assumes. So to divert suspicions from her golden armored ally, she changes to a more playful tone and asks what they are doing in this town, as she thought they had retreated to Baichun Castle. This annoys a girl in the group who sees through her attempt at innocence and says she saw her fleeing with her amulet from the fighting area before they respond. The protagonist reacts quickly and asks if they are going to try again, further angering the other girl who threatens her with death. Jeok-un intervenes, saying he will talk to them, and he addresses the dragon directly, asking for his identity since he knows he was in the demon castle, although he's not from his clan or part of any team. This makes Dorothy tremble, fearing that her ally will reveal his purpose, which he does to her dismay. "Born in the abyss, I am the one who is able to transcend the logic of the world." That's what the dragon responds, leaving everyone confused. But it doesn't end there because Jeok-un says he shouldn't answer because he already knows who he is. This surprises the dragon, forming a smile for the first time since his introduction. "I don't even know everything about myself. I want to know your opinion." Dorothy worries that he will ask her to be his guide as well. Jeok-un explains what he believes. He knows that he came from the castle room and wasn't there until the boss made his final attack. The dragon corrects this, saying that wasn't his last attack but a golden explosion that would transform the beast. Golden explosion. Well, its power matches that of a final attack. Sure, that seems like a lie, but let's say it's true. After hesitating at the revelation, Jeok-un continues, saying that after appearing, he saw him fleeing with Dorothy through the emergency door, so he concludes that his real identity was the boss of the 7th floor, who transformed into a human, the golden armored dragon, something he discovered while all the members of his team died, and he's very proud of it, starting to praise himself. This attitude makes Dorothy and the dragon uncomfortable, so the girl explains that he acts like that in situations where he feels superior to everyone, causing Jeok-un to blush with embarrassment. The leader of the Red Blood continues his explanation, emphasizing how strange it was that the boss used his last attack when he still had good health. All of this, along with the fact that the dragon transformed into a human and fled, are indications that the group triggered a secondary mission. Therefore, it is the duty of the Red Blood to complete that mission because they were the ones conducting the raid, while Dorothy was only a temporary member of the group. The girl admits he is right, so she tries to negotiate. However, the dragon stops her, putting a hand on her shoulder, doubting that Jeok-un knows what he knows about himself, so he asks him to come back when he has more information and details about that. Meanwhile, he states that he will go eat with Dorothy, surprising the short-haired girl, who praises the program's loyalty. With everything said, Dorothy dismisses Jeok-un. However, he is not satisfied and orders his men to prepare to attack. Faced with this, the protagonist says that attacking in a city is prohibited. But the red-haired man says it doesn't matter if the opponent is red. Besides, he's just an NPC. With no other options, Dorothy reminds him that she will attack the golden armored dragon, whom she couldn't defeat before and certainly won't now. However, Jeok-un doesn't agree, as he believes that now that he's human, his strength has diminished. And being in a city, he has the opportunity to revive continuously no matter how many times they die. So, it seems that the opportunity for the Red Blood group to open the 8th gate of the Demon Castle has finally arrived. Dorothy realizes that they have planned everything, even the amount of experience they lose upon death, so she tries to stop them by saying they didn't know if the dragon would request the same mission if they defeat him. Reluctantly, Jeok-un agrees, relieving the girl, but then adds, "But Dorothy, I believe, missions are not something that always have to be solved. You can also use your strength to complete it." After finishing his monologue, the redhead orders them to destroy both, without giving them a chance to continue the dialogue, so our protagonist can only curse, worried. Next, 3 members of the Red Blood group attack the dragon directly, while Dorothy simply escapes the attack. Despite landing several direct blows, the dragon remains in a static position, which worries the protagonist, and she wonders if what Jeok Chan-Woon said is true and he doesn't counterattack because he's weaker. Jeok Chan-Woon doesn't doubt and reaffirms his team's order to attack before he transforms again. However, the golden armored warrior shows no signs of pain or hesitation. It's different from when I was a dragon on the 7th floor of the demon castle. Back then, I had to carry out designated reactions regardless of my own intentions in response to human attacks. I had no reason or right to think whether those reactions had any meaning behind them. But now, I feel liberated. The golden armored dragon, now with his hair down, finishes his thoughts and analyzes the powers of the attacks. He realizes that their attack methods, though slow, are interesting and takes one of their enemies' swords with his bare hand, asking what the object is called, which worries those present. However, Jeok Chan-Woon says it was obvious he would defend himself, but they shouldn't be afraid because his group has the upper hand. So, it's quite likely that they can defeat him while he's in his humanoid form. To their dismay, Dorothy agrees with her former leader's thoughts, who fears the dragon might fall in that place. Then, the golden armored dragon changes the situation with a single move. Without letting go of the enemy's sword, he spins around, hitting all the members of the Red Blood group around him with his ally's body, leaving them all unconscious in a couple of seconds. As expected from an assault boss, "What power from a single blow," exclaims Dorothy, more confident than before, coming out of hiding. However, the dragon is confused by his own abilities. Jeok Chan-Woon notices this and questions how he doesn't know he's a Chosik, despite being an assault boss. Then, he buries his sword in the ground, saying he'll show him. "Flame barrier," the warrior shouts, and his sword releases powerful flames that engulf his body. Even so, the dragon remains indifferent to such a display and comments that Jeok Chan-Woon's Chosik is slow in its deployment and lacks fluidity, noticing that parts of it are free while others are not, just like he was in the past. He also notes that the power is activated through concentration and deployment, followed by one's fate. Such coldness angers the redhead, who raises his sword and attacks the dragon with it. However, he is surprised when his enemy easily takes the blade. It can't be. How can something like this happen? This can happen with a low-level ability, but the ability I just used shouldn't be stopped like this. Something is wrong. To stop a Chosik, a stronger form of it must be used almost simultaneously. But how did a monster who doesn't even know Chosik stop my attack? While all these questions race through Jeok Chan-Woon's mind, the dragon tightens his grip on the sword and breaks it as if it were paper. Disarmed, the Red Blood leader helplessly watches as his enemy delivers a powerful right punch that sends him flying through the air, returning to the same scene from a few moments ago. With Jeok Chan-Woon unconscious, the golden armored dragon looks at his hands and realizes that compared to his Chosik, despite everything, his movements are raw and unrefined. This piques his interest, and he looks at the remaining members of that group, the pink-haired girl who had faced Dorothy earlier, and a boy with a ponytail, asking them to attack him as their leader had just done, since he will conduct research on Chosik and the martial arts they use. After dealing with their enemies, the golden armored dragon looks somewhat disappointed at their bodies on the ground, admitting that he hasn't gained much from his victory. Nevertheless, he is fascinated by the grayish tone their bodies acquire, and he wonders if all youngins become dark and translucent upon death. Dorothy looks at her ally with excitement, affirming that she won't have anything to fear as long as she has the man by her side. On the other hand, the Red Blood girl, who is also lying down waiting to respond, acknowledges that they have no chance of winning against the human dragon, no matter how many times they respawn, so she decides to return, promising revenge against Dorothy. However, Dorothy notices the trail that covers the girl and realizes that she plans to come back. She praises her for enduring so long, even longer than Jeok Chan-Woon, who had left a while ago already, and takes the opportunity to mockingly ask her to tell her leader that they will never see each other again after that day. The pink-haired girl doesn't like this and replies as she disappears, "I've never liked anything about you from the beginning. Now you'll be on our hit list to kill along with that bastard, Dorothy. You better be prepared." Later, Dorothy and her companion continue to explore the village, which seems to have become inhospitable after the fight that caused all the NPCs to flee. The protagonist comments on this to her companion, but the former Demon Castle boss ignores her, absorbed in examining a sword that doesn't hold as much value as other weapons on the floor. It was the same equipment that Jeok Chan-Woon had in his fight. What could be Cho-6? I've observed the Cho-6 those men were using, but I can't understand how they worked. Would I be able to use them? Curious, the warrior plants the sword in the ground and recites the same words as the redhead. Fire barrier. However, for some reason, it doesn't have the same effect as when the youngins activated it. Before continuing to investigate, the long-haired man realizes that Dorothy is trembling, so he asks her what's wrong. But she starts running, saying she has to do something urgent at the inn. While the dragon insists on helping her, the protagonist only tells him to be quiet without giving any details. As he follows his guide, the dragon questions if he was scared by the battle but dismisses the possibility, saying he's not that weak-hearted. Once they arrive at the inn, Dorothy lies down on a bed and tells him not to move as she will be back soon. Before the warrior can ask for more details, a voice appears saying session terminated, and the girl begins to disappear. Seeing this, the dragon recalls the men he defeated and wonders if Dorothy died. But he realizes that while they had a dark aura, the girl emits a bright vibe, where he can feel her life slowly accumulating. It seems I'll have to investigate this, the dragon mutters, attempting to touch the girl's abdomen, only for her to pass through him. This makes him wonder if what he's seeing is a virtual image, although it doesn't feel like he's touching the air. Such a sensation leads him to assume that if she's not dead, then she simply disappeared temporarily. Just as he finishes his deduction, Dorothy completely disappears from the room. So he wonders if she will really come back, and if she breaks her promise, he will have to find another guide. However, this concern takes a backseat to his genuine curiosity about what exactly happened to Dorothy. I can't come up with an answer to that question. No matter how much I think about it, I can't see the information I saw when I was fighting as a dragon anymore. Maybe that's how I managed to escape into this world. Whatever the case, I have no choice but to wait for her, with no other option but to wait for the girl whose name he couldn't pronounce. The human-shaped dragon lies down on the same bed where Dorothy was moments before and closes his eyes, trying to rest. On another part of the Hangmok village, the members of Red Blood lament their defeat, with several of them even considering quitting the game forever. However, it's Jeok Chan-Woon who keeps their spirits high, ordering them to gather outside, even those who haven't logged in, for an emergency meeting. As they walk, he announces that he will be in his office, awaiting any information that is relayed to him. There, the redhead touches a crystal ball to access a section called Alliance News. In this space, you can see a lot of comments from other players discussing why the 7th floor door of the Demon Castle no longer opens, with many suggesting that it might be a bug. Jeok Chan-Woon is annoyed that this news has already spread to the rest of the clans. The redhead knows that what happened with the golden armored dragon is not normal, although he's not sure if it's a system error or a new mission. If it's an error, he supposes that HWA, the game developer, would simply fix it in one move and compensate the damages to all those affected quickly, with his group being one of the ones to receive the most compensation. Still, he doesn't rule out the possibility that it's a special mission. If the game were too easy, it would cease to be fun. Judging by the developer's style, they definitely won't provide hints and will want players to figure it out for themselves. Jeok Chan-Woon continues to analyze the situation, realizing that the other clan leaders wouldn't know that the raid boss of the 7th floor escaped from his dungeon in humanoid form, so it would be his group destined to defeat him. Although such a task may be one of the most challenging they've ever faced due to the new power the beast seems to have in his new body. With a better understanding of things, the redhead declares aloud that he is different from the other users who play for money. For him, the Legend of the New Mir is not just a game, it's a business where the Red Blood group will be at the center of everything. Therefore, it's essential that they definitively defeat that human-shaped dragon, no matter the cost, to make their clan the strongest on the server. But in his delusions of grandeur, a grimace forms when he thinks about the main problem with his plan. Dorothy, that girl who took the quest away from them. He hits the table, angry that she betrayed him when he was only trying to get her to join his clan. Before pondering the best way to deal with our protagonist, Jeok Chan-Woon hears a noise and wonders what kind of intruder would attack them directly when most of the clan has gathered. He looks out the window at a figure with long blue hair, with energy wings that leave the redhead in shock, as they are an epic item used exclusively by a minority of top-level players, and whose figure seemed limited to the Union Guardian, Yuan Jail. That silhouette then turns to speak to him directly. At last, we meet. Are you the leader of the Red Blood clan? Although I don't go out very often because I have other matters to attend to, today I've come to meet you personally because I wanted to ask you something. In a quiet apartment, we see a virtual reality helmet lying on the bed, and a fair-skinned girl with long hair emerges from the bathroom, wiping sweat from her forehead, complaining about forgetfulness. But just as she seemed to resume her activities, she kicks a trash bag she forgot to throw away. So she puts on a cap, takes the bag, and goes out to dispose of it. Outside her home, she sees a couple passing by, very happy, commenting on the pleasant weather and talking about going somewhere. This annoys the young woman, who spits on the ground in disgust. This is the first time I've been out in a while, and I already see things like this. It's so annoying. I better go back inside quickly. The outside world is dangerous. So, the woman quickly returns to her apartment and takes off her cap, relieved, only to realize how dirty her home is. Unfolded clothes strewn across the floor, all the dishes unwashed, and several areas accumulating dust. She sits on her bed, surprisingly neatly made, and comments that she couldn't even invite her boyfriend to a place like this, although she then remembers that she would first need a boyfriend to call. While picking up the virtual reality glasses next to her bed, she comments that she was too busy surviving to notice the mess around her. Although, according to her, things will change because if she uses that guy, she can live the life she's always dreamed of. With the equipment on, she lies down and activates it. Log in. With that phrase spoken, the girl begins to appear with a new body in the virtual world. She was Dorothy, our protagonist. Once inside, she wonders where the dragon is and if he might have gone somewhere, which he denies from behind her. This startles Dorothy, as she didn't realize she was lying on top of her ally. In response, she jumps up and scolds him for getting into her bed. The dragon defends himself by saying that she told him not to move and to stay in that spot. Seeing that it would be futile to expect anything different from an NPC, she decides to drop the subject and sits in a chair. Seeing that she's calmed down, the armored dragon demands that she give him an explanation for why she lay down so urgently, and why her body became similar to a virtual image and disappeared while she slept. These questions, especially the first one, make Dorothy uncomfortable, and she doesn't know how to tell an NPC that she had to disconnect because she had to go to the bathroom because she was about to poop. Speak, that's your duty as a guide. The long-haired man demands impatiently, which makes Dorothy even more nervous. So she agrees but asks him to stop looking at her so threateningly. Do you know why people like us are called youngins? At that moment, the humanoid dragon realizes that, in reality, youngins don't resemble dragons at all, which is precisely the reason they call themselves that. Dorothy answers that it's because they're not beings of this wasteland but belong to a different world, which they call the real world. Such a statement surprises the dragon, as he says that name implies that the world they're in now is not real. Simultaneously in this conversation, Jeok Chan-Woon finds himself in a field of flowers, surrounded by beautiful women who suddenly disappear with a shake of Giles' fan, which was next to him. The superior warrior admits that he expected more from him, as the leader of a clan, so he says he doesn't know if he's very weak or if peace in the wastelands has lasted a long time. However, Jeok Chan-Woon doesn't answer any of his doubts and just drools, showing that he's under the spell of the superior player. Very well, let's get this over with, Giles proclaims before pointing his fan at the redhead and reciting a spell. Afterward, he questions who his master is, and Jeok Chan-Woon obediently responds that he is, asking him to give him his orders. Although the long-haired man says that he will first give him a name, which would be Master Bakwon's hunting dog. Back in the inn, the golden armored dragon shows skepticism about what his guide is saying, questioning her about why they came to this fictional world and how they can know what is real and what is not. Dorothy says that she doesn't know many details about it because she's not the developer of the video game, although she supposes that those in charge did it simply because they could. This disappoints the dragon, who comments that her knowledge is far below his expectations. Dorothy reproaches him for that but then continues to explain that sometimes they have to return to the real world to take breaks and make some preparations. So, to summarize, she will be guiding him through that world as she promised, but her capabilities are limited beyond that. Resigned, the dragon says that if it exceeds his abilities, there's not much that can be done, which makes the protagonist feel like she's becoming useless to him. The long-haired man ends by saying that the real world would be a kind of route for the youngins, a fitting comparison that makes Dorothy think that, in reality, she did give a good explanation after all. With that topic clarified, the dragon now asks what Chosik is, why he can't use it like the youngins, and how he can learn it. This makes the girl nervous, and, asking for a moment, she makes a hand movement that summons a bluish light panel from which she starts reading the information she's looking for. Chosik is the smallest unit of martial arts. Wugongs are techniques from different gong busts that can be used in combat. Therefore, to know Chosiks, you must first know Gong Bu. It can be said that Murim begins and ends with Geum-gab. The girl reads aloud. She then explains that when talking about Geum-gab, she doesn't refer to the Chinese characters that mean to study, but rather to the concept of work class strictly speaking. In Legend of Mir, traditional martial arts are used, so the work classes that appear in fantasy games don't fit well. So, the classic concept of work classes doesn't exist at all, and humans in fantasy games pretend to be masters of a field, while humans in Murim seek to become a complete being. The protagonist continues explaining the game's structure. The work classes in fantasy games are very similar to those of a medieval European guild. Warriors are masters of melee combat, while archers are masters of the bow and arrow. Each of their roles is divided in every way. Hearing the last part, the dragon recalls the basics of work classes, finally understanding her explanation. Although he comments that her way of speaking makes it seem like she's reading the information from somewhere instead of reciting it from memory. This shows that he can't see Dorothy's panel and makes the girl nervous for not concealing this. The protagonist mentally scolds herself for postponing that explanation since the game started, and now that she finally read it, she got completely absorbed. To change the subject, she starts talking about how to learn Mugong, which is the basis for performing the Chosik that the dragon is looking for. Apparently, when you learn a series of Mugongs, a player can learn other types of series of the same concept. A practice described as Manhwa Guijong, which can be translated as all will become one. This implies that although there are many paths, in the end, everyone will become one. Manhwa Guijong doesn't decide the rules or methods of martial arts, so there are no rules about whether it's allowed to learn something based on the jobs. Therefore, it depends on the individual's choice to decide the Geum-gab they want to learn, although there are certain things to consider when practicing Mugong. A person should never learn another Mugong that is incompatible with the Mugong they know or practice at present, as the worst side effects can occur in their body. Something known as Juhwa. The dragon understands the theory and the basics but still has one of his initial doubts, which is how he can learn Geum-gab. To which Dorothy, looking at him face to face for the first time, responds that there are different ways, but the simplest one is for someone else to teach him. In other words, he needs a teacher to instruct him. Later, the duo finds themselves at the ginkgo tree, where Dorothy says triumphantly that she has finally removed the red blood group and Jeok Chan-Woon from her friends list, making it much harder for them to find her. The dragon looks curiously at the tree, revealing that players can transport themselves using its power. Despite its usefulness, Dorothy believes that it's a method of transportation that doesn't really fit the concept of that world. Plus, it has several limitations, although it's the best existing option for long-distance travel. An explanation that makes the dragon understand that they will use that tree, also referred to as Yongmok, as a means to find his Geum-gab master. The protagonist nods but admits to worrying about the consequences teleportation might have on him. The dragon dismisses her concerns, reminding her that he used the portal of his amulet before, so there shouldn't be a problem. Dorothy then explains her plans in detail. We need to take this tree and go to the largest city. Unfortunately, this place doesn't have any masters who can teach you, and if we keep staying here, annoying people won't leave us alone. However, Dorothy adds that they will also need a disguise. This prompts the dragon to highlight Dorothy's new appearance. She was now wearing a long cloak over her usual clothes, along with fuzzy stockings and tall boots. To this, she explains that now information about them might have started circulating in the wasteland, causing several Yongins to pursue them. While Dorothy says that with the dragon's powers, it wouldn't be a problem to defeat them, there is a possibility that these conflicts will reveal their goal of exploring the world, delaying their plan. The ex-leader supports her deduction, so the protagonist takes out some clothes she claims to have made herself. Although, in the end, they aren't necessary. Surrounded by a trail of blue light, the dragon changes his appearance entirely to a much more traditional outfit, with his hair tied up. According to him, he is capable of doing this because he had information about that figure and equipment within him, so it's not a problem for him to create and control them at will, which would also explain why he can create gold and other things. Dorothy declares that the dragon's new look is something for which an ordinary person would have to pay a lot of money. She also admits that he will still attract attention, but those who see him will think he's just a regular whale hunter player. This new look makes Dorothy blush as she tries to remind herself that they're just graphics to calm down. The dragon interrupts her thoughts, asking if they're leaving already, but Dorothy denies it, saying they still need to come up with a fake name for him, as his name Golden Armored Dragon will surely make them easily discoverable. They don't dwell on the matter much and accept the first name that comes to Dorothy's mind, Geum Ryong. Thus, the girl takes him by the hand, and they open a portal. But while this happens, a strange robotic crow watches them from a distance and takes flight when it sees them disappear. Blood in a room, several bodies scattered. That was the horrifying scene in front of Jeok Chan-Woon, who screamed in fury while one of the people in the place begged for mercy. On the other hand, Dorothy and Geum Ryong, the golden armored dragon, were in the big city where they were surrounded by a large crowd of people pushing them around. The protagonist wonders if there is some kind of event happening and gets angry when someone elbows her in the face, so she throws punches in the air, knocking a girl to the ground. But when she tries to help the girl up, the crowd gets in her way again. Despite Dorothy's screams, she's furious, threatening them, when suddenly everyone backs away. At first, she wonders if they realized how terrifying she could be, but then she turns and realizes that everyone actually dispersed because of Geum Ryong, who activated his aura, an action for which the girl praises him, saying that he was better at reading the situation than she expected. Dorothy finally manages to approach the girl and lifts her up, asking if she's hurt. But the young girl only gives a quick thanks and, with a big smile, quickly bids farewell to her. Does she have urgent matters or something? Dorothy wonders, confused. Later that night, Dorothy says that they will have to change their plans to find the girl who robbed them, which turns out to be more important than finding a master for Geum Ryong. The dragon says he could easily create money for her, but the protagonist says she's angry about the theft, not the loss. Geum Ryong watches the show she's putting on and is surprised by the intense grudge her guide holds against the girl, equivalent to what a person would have against an irreconcilable enemy, even if they didn't lose all their resources. In an attempt to convince him, Dorothy says that helping her find the girl would make them finish faster, and therefore they would find his master sooner, which makes the dragon think, I couldn't detect any sign that this girl would steal from you. According to the guide's explanation, though I couldn't see it, it was a Geum-gab called Tudo that can steal items from inside bags. Finding that girl would also be part of learning about this world. It's not something that goes against my purpose, and I'm curious about the Geum-gab called Tudo, so I'll follow your words. Stating her point, Geum Ryong agrees, and Dorothy says they'll start their mission tomorrow as it's very late. With that said, she mentions that when a Yongin says they're going to sleep, it means they're returning to the real world, and normally, they must return to reality at least once every 4 days to recharge their energy in return. The man then asks how long it would take, to which she explains that if he sleeps well, bathes, and has breakfast, and multiplies it by 3, it would take approximately 1 day in that world. This leaves Geum Ryong unimpressed, which worries the protagonist, as time in the game passes normally even when she's logged out, and there's nothing she can do to change it. Dorothy realizes that this waiting time is enough for Geum Ryong to get into trouble, or for their mission to be stolen by the Red Blood group. So she pleads with her ally to promise her that he'll stay there and not go anywhere, thinking about how much it would hurt to lose that easily usable NPC. I've spent an endless amount of time in the darkness of the demon castle. 1 day is a short time for me. I'll wait for you. The girl thanks him, saying how understanding he is, and promises to return the next day so they can search for the thief together. She logs out, and Geum Ryong talks about how bored he is after Dorothy left, as he used to endure countless hours of waiting when he was just a dragon. That's why he believed waiting for Dorothy wouldn't be a problem. However, there was an error in his calculations. At first, I counted the number of pieces of furniture in the room. A multi-purpose ornamental table, 2 chairs, a table, and a bed, and many other various pieces of furniture. I counted the number of patterns on the teapot, and I counted the number of fine cracks in the teacup that were barely visible, but it hadn't even been an hour yet, and I accepted that the situation I was facing was extremely serious. I was different from before. The dragon realizes that his change of form caused him to feel a sense of emptiness he had never felt before when he used to do nothing for long periods of time. What was this emptiness called? Geum Ryong knew it, and it was boredom. I reflected, knowing that I had to do something to fight against this boredom, remembering that the guide begged me not to do anything. Right? The guide begged me not to go anywhere else, knowing that anywhere else regulates space, but there is no indication that anywhere is confined to this single room. Although the dragon himself admits that he understands what Dorothy's intentions were, he understands that all he had to avoid was leaving that in. So, he decides to go to the bar and blend in with the people to dispel his boredom while waiting, something that wouldn't directly go against his guide's intentions. In the inn's bar, Geum Ryong was having tea, but, frustrated, he comments that he's still bored. At this point, he says that there's only one thing left to do and releases his aura to the maximum, seeing if it will attract anyone's attention, or if something interesting will happen. The customers notice this, and some even hide under their tables. While his aura covers the entire place, the dragon notices that they are much calmer, despite everything, than when he released it on the street. As this happens, he notices an old man who, despite trembling, remains calm. This catches his attention, making him wonder if there is something special about that old man. At that moment, the tremors of a diner under the table caused a bowl of soup to fall. But before the dish fell, the old man, who had only 3 fingers on his hand, picked it up effortlessly and drank it. Seeing this, the dragon ends up approaching the man. "You're strange. You don't seem to be a Yongin, but you have a notable presence," says the old man as he sees him approaching. Geum Ryong asks him if what he did was Cho-sik, but the old man corrects him, saying he shouldn't ask if it was Cho-sik but rather what kind of Cho-sik he used, so the long-haired man asks him this, getting his answer. Like 2 dragons holding a Sintamani, it's a technique where 2 fingers are used to grasp an object. But this old man knows how to use 3, so you should call this liquor of 3 dragons instead of 2 dragons. Geum Ryong says it wasn't necessary for him to explain exactly how he did it. Although he says that now that he told him that what he used was Cho-sik, it was his duty to become his master. A bold request that makes the old man spit out his soup and ask him if he was sick for asking him that. The long-haired man responds directly that he has never been sick, and he explains that he had come to that city to learn what is called Gongbu. "My presence has not been revealed to anyone other than a Yongin before, but a very peculiar one has appeared. Should I give someone who is not a Pyongin or a Yongin a chance for a connection?" The old man thinks about his situation, and finally he gets up to tell Geum Ryong that he's quite strange, and he seems to have lost his manners towards his elders, because even though he's a beggar, he still maintains his pride, so he doesn't take just anyone as his disciple. Geum Ryong then asks him how he could become his apprentice, to which the man raises his 3-fingered hand, making the humanoid dragon think that he wanted gold. Although the old man clarifies that he wouldn't make him his apprentice even if he gave him 10,000 yongs, which is the game's official currency. The old man introduces himself as Sam Hwa Ya of Gibang and explains that he has only followed one rule throughout his life, and that is if someone wants something from him, they must receive 3 Cho-siks from him, and they should endure it if they want him to train them. Geum Ryong doesn't hesitate for a second and gladly accepts his condition. The old man says he likes people who decide quickly and, giving his approval, asks him to follow him outside the bar. Outside the establishment, Sam Hwa envelops himself in what appears to be a vortex of light from the ground, which makes the surrounding citizens look astonished, saying that he was a high-level Gibang Master NPC. However, they also murmur about Geum Ryong and his origin as an NPC. Nevertheless, Geum Ryong is oblivious to all criticism and just looks in wonder at the power radiating from the old man, commenting that he can feel the gentle presence of a dragon emanating from his power. Hang Taeyong Uhwe. The elderly man shouts, releasing his powerful attack that pushes Geum Ryong back, although it doesn't visibly harm him externally. So Sam Hwa congratulates him for being quite good, despite looking so delicate, but urges him to prepare for the second Cho-sik. As the crowd continues to murmur, the man releases a new attack. Yongjian Ioya, Sam Hwa exclaims, launching a new attack that seems to have a greater effect on the dragon. To this, the old man apologizes, explaining that he accidentally put some force into the last blow, which doesn't surprise Geum Ryong, who says he now understands why the second Cho-sik felt much heavier. However, he looks at the man with a smile and says, "As I expected, I must have changed from how I used to be. The presence that scratches the surroundings in your Cho-sik. I've never felt anything so vivid before." The old man laughs and comments that although this is meant to be a test for him, it feels like Geum Ryong is the one testing him. That said, he rolls his eyes again and releases a force, proclaiming that he will perform the third and final Cho-sik. Once again, the old man gathers a great amount of energy around him and takes a big leap. In midair, he thinks that it would be dangerous if an ordinary person received this Cho-sik. However, if it's someone who isn't affected by their own Cho-sik, then it should be fine. By Ryong Yi-chun, the old man exclaims as he plummets. But Geum Ryong isn't worried. He analyzes the Cho-sik and realizes that it is finely calculated, being an attack that determines the location of his landing in advance while significantly damaging the area around it, ensuring the user's safety. After finishing his analysis, the dragon wonders if the Cho-sik could deviate from its intended location and, filled with curiosity, decides to jump, surprising the old man. Then the dragon punches the center of Sam Hwa's attack, creating a small explosion that sends both of them flying in opposite directions. However, while Sam Hwa says he almost died, noting that he didn't imagine that the boy would be able to catch his attack, Geum Ryong is fine and approaches to ask him if he can now teach him the thing called Gongbu, even having the audacity to directly call him his master. Days later, at the inn, Dorothy returns to her bed after resting, and the first thing she sees is Geum Ryong saying that they were waiting for her and Sam Hwa greeting her and commenting that, as he thought, Yongins are truly magnificent beings. This scene makes the girl scream. Once calmed down, Dorothy asks her ally what exactly happened while she was gone and also wants to know who the old man is. To all of this, Geum Ryong simply says, quite dejectedly, that he couldn't have a master, and Sam Hwa explains that he belongs to Gebang, besides introducing himself. The revelation surprises the protagonist, who reveals that a Gebang is a beggar and also one of the best sources of information in the game. There is some truth in what you said, says Sam Hwa before asking for her name. Although the protagonist doesn't respond, thinking about why there's a Gebang NPC in the room. The old man insists and tells her his name, although, like Geum Ryong, he can only say the sound do, so he simply refers to her as Little Do, something that Dorothy doesn't have a problem with. Beyond where this meeting is taking place, in a desert where an entire village is settled, a person gracefully jumps between the buildings, until they enter one of the few buildings in perfect condition, wondering where a certain object they desperately seek might be. These wand fanatics have many of them. Bang Ju Shil's wand has to be one of them. That's the only wand that seems useful. Although, they then question whether their mission is going too well, they find a bamboo wand that they proudly take, proclaiming that they have acquired the object they were looking for. Here, it is revealed that this person was the same thief who stole part of Dorothy's money earlier. But when she was about to leave, saying that it was much easier than she expected, the door in front of her opens to reveal a man carrying buckets in both hands. With not many options, the girl curses before letting out a scream that can be heard from a distance, although the exact origin of this is unknown. Back at the inn, Geum Ryong repeats, with the same sadness, that he couldn't have a master, but Dorothy merely emphasizes this coldly, while thinking about how the dragon managed to cause so much trouble despite not having much time since he disconnected, making her believe that this guy was much more problematic than she initially thought. Once she hears his story, Dorothy wonders why Sam Hwa can't teach Geum Ryong after agreeing to be his master. The old man says they have already tried everything to make him his disciple, making him bow to him 9 times, swearing by the heavens and the earth, but nothing worked, which even surprises the protagonist because that was how contracts were sealed. Geum Ryong then adds that just in case he failed to become his disciple, he learned different chosiks from Sam Hwa. However, he could only copy the postures since he couldn't create the power of chosik itself. Then he admits that it will be challenging to find a way to learn Gongbu in the city, so he asks Dorothy what her next plan is. Dorothy smiles maliciously and thinks that to attract a person from Gebang in the midst of all the different Moonpa, he must be special. So, she approaches behind Sam Hwan and asks him if, instead of thinking about being Geum Ryong's master, he could do her the favor of looking for someone, as he should be able to find her easily as a Gebang. When the old man asks who she is, the protagonist only says that she is a very disrespectful thief, while cracking her knuckles. Gebang is an old city. For a time, it was considered the best city in the east of Jungwon. That's why it was called by a different name, Dongjayong. San Hwan narrates as he guides Dorothy and Geum Ryong through that city full of docks. The girl, in her mind, says that the structure of the place was even built taking reference from a place called Gebang in China. Continuing with his explanation, the old man tells how the city's canal was made by a man who created waterways that were originally not there. So, as Deha connected with China's vein and the waters of the Yangtze River, all supply is gathered in that city. And that's how it began to develop into the metropolis it is today. To confirm, Geum Ryong asks if that city was created by controlling the waters to gain transportation advantage, which the old man fully supports, although he clarifies that these waters were also capable of causing damage just as well. And it's precisely because of humans' inability to control nature that they must live in harmony with it. Then, Sam Hwan explains that Gebang has sunk under the waters 7 times since its history started being recorded and begins to tell a story about it. Although Dorothy continues to look around, speculating that all this could be a clue for a long-term quest. There is a legend still passed down in Gebang about a demonic dragon that will appear in the skies one day, and Gebang will once again be swallowed by the waters of D for the 9th time. The legend says that will be the end of this city. Hearing this, Geum Ryong assumes that if there have already been 7 submersions, then there are only 2 left from now on. Something the old man confirms, saying that the young man understands things quickly. Likewise, he adds that in Gibon, there are quite a few secret places where a considerable amount of treasures and different types of monsters are hidden, possibly due to its history of immersion. Hearing the implications of treasures and monsters, Dorothy deduces that this city is a regional dungeon, comparable to at least 7 city-scale dungeons. Sam HWA mentions that many warriors have come with the goal of obtaining such treasures, having the same greedy expressions as Dorothy, something he says without even looking at the girl. The protagonist asks if he could tell her the location of those treasures. The old man refuses, asking if she really thinks he'll tell her with an uncovered mouth. Dorothy reminds him that he lost his bet with Geum Ryong, so he should help them. However, Sam H-Wan responds that that's precisely why he's telling them the whereabouts of the dumpling thief, so she shouldn't demand more. Dorothy grumbles and asks, as a last resort, if there are no things in this world like giving a gift. Although, once again, Sam H-Wan rebuts her, asking where in the world anyone would give a fortune as a promotional gift. The protagonist chooses to stop insisting, defeated, and instead asks where exactly they are heading. The old man replies that they are heading to the main group of Gibang. Dorothy guesses that the thief is part of the group, but Sam H-Wan denies this and explains that Gibang is actually a place where thieves cannot roam freely. Is it because it's Gibang? Suggests Dorothy, and Sam H-Wan agrees, saying that despite her appearance, she really uses her brain. Something that, of course, offends Dorothy, but when she's about to respond, she hears shouts from individuals running between the rooftops to catch a thief. They are the guardians of the place, reveals the old man, so they assume that an accident must have occurred since they are deployed. When Dorothy tries to see who the people were chasing, she discovers it was the same girl who had stolen from her, and they make eye contact. Unable to contain herself, the protagonist shouts at her, saying she was looking for her. The other girl takes advantage of this and replies as if they were friends, saying she was looking for her too because she had already done what she ordered, although she ended up getting caught. So, she should run as well. Dorothy instantly notices that she's trying to frame her and shouts that no one would be so stupid to fall for something so obvious. However, the men chasing the girl also organize to pursue Dorothy and Geum Ryong. And even the elderly Sam HWA looks offended when he discovers that the duo was collaborating with that thief. We're finished. These beggars are NPCs, so no matter what reasons we give, it won't work. Ugh, so annoying. All because of that thief. While the protagonist was reflecting internally, Geum Ryong begins to chase the thief. Although Dorothy scolds him for that, she then realizes that their pursuers won't listen to reason due to their programming, so escaping is probably the best option. With this clear, the short-haired girl is about to follow her ally, but Sam HWA tries to grab her arm to stop her. So, Geum Ryong quickly places himself in a rather strange position. Yongjuna Yai, the dragon recites, and the old man wonders if he also fooled him into thinking he couldn't do Cho-sik. Assuming the worst, he decides to take cover while cursing them, only to realize that he gave them an advantage to escape. Angry, Sam HWA shouts at the guardians to hurry up and capture them. Ahu, they're getting heated. Since they're so eager, I should give them a present, says the girl with bald hair, throwing a smoke bomb that obscures everyone's view. Then, she starts yelling at Dorothy that even if she hates Gibang and doesn't even want to see the beggars from the place, using Dangmun's poison mines was excessive. This terrifies the pursuers, who are ordered by Sam H-Wan to stay still to avoid serious harm. On the other side of the curtain, the thief is seen shouting to be careful because a wrong move could mean death. But despite such warnings, there was no trap among the smoke curtain, and it was all a new trick to deceive them and frame Dorothy and Geum Ryong. The protagonist realizes this, and with not many more options, she just curses the girl next to her, not knowing how everything escalated to such extremes. Later, the three were in a restaurant where the thief was eating several rice balls, while commenting that she often feels very nauseous after doing a job. Seeing that her companions weren't eating, she tells them not to worry because they are in a safe place. However, Dorothy looks at her uncomfortably, thinking that she was a rather strange NPC since, despite stealing her money and falsely incriminating her, she now acts quite normal with them. She also starts examining her outfit and realizes that her clothing has changed rapidly since she found her on the street, with armor and weapons on her. So Dorothy directly asks her identity, to which the thief simply introduces herself as Gepetto. That was a unique name, impossible for most NPCs, let alone the Pyongyans, to say what the protagonist thought. This is confirmed by Geum Ryong, who tries to say the thief's name but can only pronounce Z. All of this seems to confirm Dorothy's beliefs. Tell me the truth, are you a human? The protagonist asks directly, but Gepetto doesn't take it seriously, saying it was silly to even ask, and says, of course, she's a human. Her tone infuriates Dorothy, who shouts that holding back her anger was stupid and now asks where the money she stole is. Unperturbed, Gepetto says she spent it all. This causes Dorothy to pounce on her across the table, claiming she will have to pay the debt with her blood. However, the smaller girl remains calm and says she heard that Dorothy easily gets angry when she's hungry, before taking a rice ball and putting it in her mouth, making her choke. That move stops Dorothy, and the blue-eyed girl takes the opportunity to say not to worry about that small amount of money and eat, and if she does, she will tell her something much better than her money. In the end, the protagonist finishes eating her rice ball but still demands her money, saying that she never said she wanted to hear her out. However, Geum Ryong does seem interested and asks Gepetto if what she did earlier was sick. The girl confirms this, explaining that it was specifically a gong-bu called Geum-na, a rather simple manual skill. Furious, the humanoid dragon asks her if she would teach it to him again, which the blue-eyed girl gladly accepts. Dorothy is about to shout again, angry to see them talking without paying attention to her. But Gepetto beats her to it and takes another rice ball to put it in her mouth, silencing her and choking her. Gepetto asks the humanoid dragon if he saw what she did, which he confirms. Then, Geum Ryong takes a rice ball curiously and makes the same movement to put it in Dorothy's mouth, who tears up because her ally will also choke her. However, when he's inches away from her face, Geum Ryong stops, realizing that it's different. Nevertheless, Gepetto applauds, surprised, saying that his observation skills are amazing, although she mentions that his problem is that he only replicates the movement. Geum Ryong says he knows that, but he doesn't know why, which catches Gepetto's attention, and she asks how he never heard about it, to which the dragon replies that it's because his guide doesn't know. Dorothy tries to defend herself by saying that she does know, so Gepetto tests her with several questions. Do you really know? Then why can Pyongyans use Mugong? Why can Yongyans and Muins learn Gongbu and use Mugong? What's the difference between Gongbu and Muin? Nervous, Dorothy doesn't answer anything and, instead, says that she knows all that, but her problem is that she doesn't know how to explain it in a way that Geum Ryong would understand. It's then that Gepetto says that she can explain it easily, which Geum Ryong accepts, much to our protagonist's dismay. Elsewhere, in what appears to be a ranch, Sam HWA was drinking sake outside a house, feeling quite sad, thinking that no one in their right mind would ask a stranger for help with such important matters for their culture. However, he is aware that he has no other choice, so he looks ahead and says, "It was a man and 2 women. Among them, one was called Miss Du or something like that. This old beggar can't fully understand the names of the Yongins, so I couldn't learn her full name." The man in front of him downplays the matter but questions if he's really sure there were 3 people, while putting his fan to cover part of his face. This man was Yuan-jil, the guardian of the Union, and the one who hypnotized Jeok-Chan. The elderly Sam HWA says he's sure, mentioning that every time he thinks of them, he specifically remembers the young lady who was with them. This makes the elegant man frown, as when he left Bai Seong-chul, there were only 2 people, so he questions why there was such a change. He then asks Sam H-Wen to give him more details, asking if any of them wore a golden suit of armor. But the old man denies it, saying that the clothing they wore was black. However, in the middle of his description, a memory seems to hit him suddenly. Yuan-jil notices this and asks if he's okay since he looks paler than before. The old man dismisses it, saying it's something that happens when someone gets older. Not wanting to talk about it further, he asks the other man if there's anything else he'd like to know, to which Yuan-jil is quite direct and asks if there was anything unusual about the group. Sam H-Wen tells him that at one point, the boy tried to make him his master to learn Gongbu but failed. The last part makes Yuan-jil's evil smile grow, as he realizes that Geum Ryong cannot learn such a practice. Satisfied with the information, he closes his fan and promises the old man that he will do everything he can to solve his problem. Furthermore, he reveals that he already knows the identity of that man, which confuses the old Sam H-Wen as it has no relation to the topic they're discussing. Yuan-jil interrupts him and says that, as someone from Gibang, he surely knows the true story of the evil dragon and the Mayan. Just mentioning that name, Sam H-Wen stands up in fear, realizing a truth about his culture. However, the man in the white robe doesn't provide any more details. Instead, he turns to say goodbye. It seems there will soon be a bloodbath in Gang-ho. So, before that, you must peacefully resolve everything for when the time comes. Please pray from the bottom of your heart. Back with the protagonist and the others, Gepetto agrees to teach Geum Ryong everything he wants to know with the condition that he lets her accompany them. Something the humanoid dragon easily accepts, although Dorothy opposes this, stating that there's something strange about her that can be seen with a single glance. With every truth, there are consequences, the dragon retorts, reminding Dorothy that those were words she herself told him before and originally what she would have told him. This puts Dorothy at a crossroads, and in her mind, she admits that Geum Ryong is much firmer than she expected and may not be so easy to manipulate. She even questions if he's really an NPC. However, her train of thought is interrupted by Gepetto, saying that the phrase "with every truth, there are consequences" is a famous quote, and before revealing the quote's origin, the protagonist tells her to shut up to avoid more humiliation. Although after her outburst, she sighs heavily and eventually agrees to let her accompany them. It will be more advantageous for me to allow her to accompany me rather than being pushed back by the stupid impulse of these two, Dorothy thinks. Although the protagonist adds a new condition to their deal, which is that Gepetto must repay all the money she stole from her, plus interest. Something that seems to annoy Gepetto, but she accepts. Or so it seems, as right after, she turns her face, forming a malicious smile that her companions fail to see. Now, at night, the group walks through a meadow wearing long robes that almost completely hide them. Dorothy scolds Gepetto, asking who could have the guts to steal a sacred and important Gibang object like the Tagubong. A move that the other girl notices is an attempt to extract information about her real identity, and replies, "Unnai, trying to uncover someone's secret identity is not good manners." The protagonist defends herself, saying it's not like she has to know, but you never know either, as she could just be a brave old man making an accidental mistake or something like that. But Gepetto isn't worried because she proudly says that she's also as cute as the character they see. A statement that, when said out loud, seems to confirm to Dorothy that at least Gepetto is a girl. As they continue their journey, Dorothy complains about the long walk and reveals to the viewer that due to the Tagubong that Gepetto stole, they can't use teleportation. So now, they must wear those cumbersome hooded robes to avoid being discovered by the many beggars roaming the area. Curious, Dorothy asks Gepetto why they're heading to the Shaolin Temple, which she planned to steal from. To which the girl merely returns a confident look, saying that she should already know because she also intended to go to the Shaolin Temple. Is that so? No wonder this stubborn guide followed this girl. Geum Ryong thinks, watching how nervous Dorothy becomes at that statement. Despite her embarrassed blush, the protagonist asks when she said she wanted to go there. To which Gepetto says that she can read her mind a little. "Since you were trying to find a way to teach Gongbu to the older brother here, I can guess it wasn't easy for you to find a scroll. So, you were trying to take him to a Pan, right? And the Shaolin Temple is the only Manhwa around here that's close to your level. It's very predictable." Such a guess leaves Dorothy in shock, and she seriously asks the other girl if she can really read minds. But Gepetto mocks her, saying that no matter how good the game developers are, telepathy is an ability they couldn't have included. Although, she adds that it's not the most important part, rather, the fact that they can't enter the Shaolin Temple at the moment. Information that seems to have been received and known by everyone else, except Dorothy herself. Dorothy complains, saying it seems like she's trying to start a fight again. But she still asks why they couldn't enter. Gepetto responds that it's because the site is located in the middle of Bong. This satisfies Dorothy, but it's Geum Ryong who asks what exactly that temple is, in addition to the meaning of Bong Mun. Dorothy was about to explain when Gepetto interrupts. "Big brother, the Shaolin Temple is a very famous Manhwa. It's an amazing place. It's even said that all martial arts originate from the Shaolin Temple. That Manhwa is located in Sungsan, near where we are now." Now Geum Ryong understands what the place they're looking for is like. He then asks about the meaning of Bong Mun. This implies, explains Gepetto, that the Shaolin Temple will halt all its activities and won't receive disciples or guests for a short period of time. Apparently, this often happens due to internal issues within the Manhwa or the state of El Paramo. But the exact reason is known only to themselves, as it remains hidden even among them. Dorothy then asks what they will do. But while she contemplates her situation, she makes a joke. The Shaolin Temple is in the middle of a Bong Mun. The Shaolin monks are in the middle of Bong Mun, so is that why they're in the middle of Bong Mun? Such a joke makes Gepetto and Geum Ryong cringe with embarrassment, with the dragon even thinking that this was a feeling he had never felt before since he left the demon castle. The blue-eyed girl doesn't hold back and tells Dorothy that if that was the kind of joke she liked to make, then she'll have to wait until she logs out to do them. Dorothy defends herself, saying that, in reality, she was just having an internal monologue. But Gepetto only asks her not to make the lives of the people around her more difficult. On the other hand, someone holds the large head of a wild tiger while eating its raw meat without decorum. That was Jeok Chan-Woon, who had a much wilder appearance than everyone was accustomed to. He then ventures further into the forest, his gaze murderous. While the protagonist's group continued walking, Geum Ryong suddenly stops to tell the girl that he has something to tell them, and that is that he needs a name by which to call her, knowing that he can't pronounce names well. This excites Gepetto, who quickly approaches the dragon to share her opinion. "That's a good idea, big brother. Do you happen to know how people in movies or books call people close to them by pet names? Other people can't do it, but I'll allow you, big brother, especially. We need to think of a nice name. What would be a good one?" Geum Ryong admits that he just needs names that are easy to pronounce, but says this with a big smile that shows he's excited about the idea. Gepetto also understands what he's looking for and asks if Z's would work. The dragon pronounces the nickname to try it out, and it comes out without a problem, so he accepts it, saying it's a good choice. Dorothy, who appeared rather detached, says she doesn't care about that and prefers to keep it between them. However, the dragon replies that Geum Ryong is a name chosen by her, and he likes it, implying that to some extent, he wants to return the favor. Blushing, the protagonist admits that she's relieved to hear that and comments that she's learned that using titles makes things much clearer, something Geum Ryong agrees with and goes on to deliver another one of his classic monologues. "If it were just the two of us, two beings in this world, the need for names would decrease. Names are a form of recognition for a third and fourth entity. They allow the truths of individuals to be." "Stop," Dorothy exclaims then, thinking that she has no idea what her ally is talking about. Fed up with it, she agrees to let Geum Ryong name her as he wishes, with the condition that the dragon doesn't continue with his chattering. Although she admits she has no idea what nickname he could use, Geum Ryong stops and thinks for a moment. He decides to use the same logic he used to name Gepetto and asks if it's okay to call her Dodo, something the girl confirmed, blushing, saying that it's okay. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. If you have reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you have been one of the few people to make it here. So comment the word dragon in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.